Timothy Pawlak from Maxable Studios to give us the ABCs of ADUs.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Timothy Pawlak. I'm a consultant for Maxable Space. And as a former senior planner for the city architect for City of San Diego and also architect, it's really important to understand how this legislation comes down and becomes ordinance at the city level for yourself, and actually in language that you can understand. So this is just a map of some of the homeowners that we have touched throughout the state of California. At Maxable, we offer opportunities to educate as the leading educator in California for ADUs, educate homeowners on their options. There are a lot of different companies that do this. And we address different types of ADUs. There are a variety of different types. And some of these here, pretty much attached, detached garage conversions, are options for you. You may be thinking, what is possible on my property? A lot of them are above garage, or also there's a junior ADU option that's available for single family owners that have want to expand on their existing home space. Is an ADU right for me? This is one of the questions we get often from homeowners. It's the discussion of all the complexity that goes into an ADU, not only building it, but actually managing it and having it be either a family member or a rental property on your property. So it's a very close relationship that you have, and you have to understand as you move forward. Some of the different reasons that people produce or construct ADUs. Primarily, it's been the granny flat has kind of identified an aging parent or even a college student that may want to live at home but have their own independent space. These different reasons also can motivate what type of design may be done and what's possible on the property. There are different benefits to owning an ADU, and some of these are also challenges. So you may think, all right, great, it's a great income, but it's also something you want to consider about the landlording process, how you're able to manage that, and having that involved in a very close space in your home. So, what's the most fear? It's the unknown, but also the permitting process. Why the permitting process? In the past, when we've come up to ordinances, our city ordinances or jurisdictions, it has been typically an environment of no. And this paradigm has shifted dramatically now, where the jurisdictions are really trying to help homeowners realize their vision and add these ADUs to increase housing and to also increase their ability to afford living in this community. So what's the process? A big part is understanding the regulations. You hear about legislation being passed. How is that? How do you understand that? All the nuances that are involved in that. That's something that we at Maxable Space do. We, as educators for this legislation, we work closely with professionals in the community and jurisdictions to give you the best knowledge and information that you can use so you can move forward. The other thing is, should I build one? And I think that's another good question to ask yourself. It may seem like this prime opportunity, but you want to be realistic about things. You want to ask yourself those hard questions: do I want to move in this environment? Is it something that I can manage, and is it something that works for me? So we're always looking for the solution that best fits you and your needs. And a lot of times when I'm on consulting at a site visit, one of the homeowners' example is that they wanted to move from their primary home into the ADU and then have their children and their grandchildren live in the primary home. So that was a very different approach than just building it for a rental. So this homeowner was like, I want to have this be very personal. I'm going to be living in there, and that's really critical to the process and the design. Just an example, this is an email that was received back by a homeowner that decided to do it themselves, right? And that's an option that you can do. A lot of people feel like, well, I can run these permits. I've got some design experience, and that's great. That can always be incorporated into your project needs. However, this was an email that they received back on all the corrections that needed to be done after they submitted their plans. So it can be one of those things where you're brought into deeper waters very quickly, and that's why you want to have a team of experts working with you or side by side so that you can achieve your goal. So looking for an architect, the construction process, and the cost. A lot of people want to know, what's the cost? How do we evaluate this? We use construction costs as estimates. You can see here it's $220 to $250. Sometimes in some neighborhoods we have to be conservative and say $300 a square foot, but just take that number and multiply it times what you believe you want to do, and you can kind of get an estimate of the capital that you'll need to develop these. This is toilet paper. Okay. This is Caitlin, the owner's example of buying in bulk. So being a Costco fan myself, I love to just go buy lots of things. If it's on a pallet, then I definitely want it. But toilet paper, ADUs aren't bulk. They're not kind of developed on that way. So each ADU, some people feel the smaller the ADU is, the less expensive it will be. Like, I only want to convert my garage. So that's going to only cost me a couple, $10,000 to $20,000. But they include all the same infrastructure that a home does. It needs a bathroom, a kitchen, sewer, electrical. So the square footage, the cost per square foot, actually increases as you decrease the volume or the size of the ADU. Does that mean you go big? Not necessarily. What you want to do is have a balance. You had a question?
Can you go back to that last slide?
Sure. You'd like the toilet paper one? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so that should cover the fixed cost, which would include the permits?
Yes.
Okay.
And there are a lot of municipalities, including San Diego and county, that are waiving impact fees, where you're connecting your sewer lines to existing sewer lines. Those used to be, the development impact fees are very high on that. So homeowners are getting relief in many areas to accelerate this process. Remember, these ordinances and these legislation is only in place for 5 years. So there's an urgency and an opportunity. Some of you have unpermitted, non-permitted work on your property. And what did we do in the past? We'd hide, right? Shh, don't tell anyone. This is brought all these homeowners out and said, hey, this is my opportunity. I can make this legal and come out of the shadows, right? So look at it as an opportunity for that also. Return on investment, what you have to look at is if you take your home and you look at the appraised value and you look at the square footage and you do a calculation, you come up with what it costs per square foot, the value, right? Well, the construction cost and the value of that, there's a difference. That becomes your return on your investment. Here are some examples. In San Diego, if you look at a large detached 800 square foot 2-bedroom, 2-bath configuration, $245,000. And Meredith at Loan Depot and Michael will explain more of the details there regarding how financing and ways to do it. But you can see a monthly loan payment of $1,158, a rental, market rent at $2,100. Each municipality where you live is different. So the rent you can command is different, so you always want to keep that in play. Some areas we found a 1-bedroom is just right. You don't need a full 2-bedroom. Some people I want a 3-bedroom. I've worked with homeowners where they had a home that was back on a long, long lot. They lived in that home. They built an ADU up front. They lived in that ADU. They made a 1,200 square foot home, right? They lived there, and then they rented out the original home, which may have been 800 square feet. Construction bids, that's a process you need to go through and make sure you're doing that. I know that Jared's going to be speaking after this, and he's going to go into a lot more details on the process about the design phase, moving through schematic process and permitting. So I'm going to move through that. During construction, here's an example. This is Caitlin's mother. They had a garage. They wanted to convert this garage. It had a storage space attached to it, so they went through, hired an architect. They designed it out. They had to do significant renovation on the garage and kind of deal with some issues in grading when you're on a hillside, support, foundation. They built an outdoor deck that went over the driveway so that they would have outdoor space. In fact, with ADU development, you want to really keep in mind outdoor space is a very important part. When we think about square footage, we think through a traditional sense. ADUs do not think in that way, and experts who focus on ADUs are the key to this because they design volume. They think about cubic feet, not square feet. So when you think, how could anyone live in 250 square feet? My home's 1,200 square feet. Well, if you've been in any ADU that's well designed, 250 feels like 500. They're dealing with higher ceilings, more thought toward the volume than just the square footage. Here's some shots from the inside. I'm hustling through because I have about 5 minutes left. Maxable, we have, if you want to give me your email after, I can send you a 2020 ADU cheat sheet, which will really kind of summarize everything in a very simple way so that you can have that as a resource. We have a table here that I'll just get your email, or you can give me your card, and I'll be happy to respond to you on that. And then for last, I just want to share a little story. I went through an exercise with my family. I should say I put them through a little torturous exercise. We decided in November to do an experiment and move out of our house, and in a plan to move into an ADU. So we took everything. Has anyone ever, you've moved, right? All right, you know the stress that comes with moving, you know those things, right? So we purposely did this as an exercise to see how we could go tiny. Let me tell you, we still have boxes that we're still figuring out. So we moved everything out. We went through a process of donating, selling off, getting rid of things, and then moved back into the house. Insanity, right? I'm still recovering, but I think the important part was that what I realized is we could live in a lot smaller space. We have way too much stuck in closets. In fact, the larger the garage, the more I seem to store, right? Because one day I'll need that, right? So, but we typically, the thing we need one day, we buy another one, and then we find it later. So it was in our discovery of that we realize how much more we could do. So when you're thinking about your solution, make sure you work with experts that can help you realize how to maximize what you have. One of the things that I do as a consultant is I challenge your thinking. I say, well, are you sure you want to do it this way? When we look at the site, I'm on site, I'm visiting, I'll be asking you these questions to say, I know you're thinking through the lens of where you live right now, but it's not necessarily the lens in which you're going to live in that ADU. So keep in mind the exercise, and if you feel like doing it, just send me an email so I can hear how you're doing. We look at what's called low-hanging fruit. A lot of times people only think detached ADU, but a garage conversion may be the very thing that will meet the cost, the financing, and the solution you want. So these are things that we look for. A detached two-car garage can easily be converted into an ADU without, you can use the existing structure. Regarding walkable neighborhood, access to transit, an area that may command higher rents, because if you're going to spend $250,000 on an ADU and you may be in a transitional neighborhood, you may not be able to command the rent to really get the value on that, right? Alley access, again, when you're thinking about it, you're talking about proximity to your existing home. You're talking about access individual for each unit, the privacy included in that. So these are all the things that I like to do when I'm on site with you and say, okay, so you really love your backyard, but did you know you're going to have neighbors that are this close? If you think about moving the plan this way, you'll afford yourself that same privacy and allow them to have some privacy too. So it's all in those details, but actually just refining your vision so that you can be specific when you talk to an architect like Jared, who's going to speak next. And then you can go in and say, this is what I want because I've done this feasibility study. I know what I can do, and I can move forward. Any other questions? All right, thank you.